Ready?
Mm-hmm.
All right. My name is Earl Johnson. I'm the grandfather of Donisha, Donnie, and I'm the dad of Antoinette Johnson. I'm here for Thanksgiving. I haven't seen my daughter and my grandkids in a few years, and I thank God for blessing me to be here to spend this time with them. I live in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I work for myself. I'm a contractor, private contractor that is, and I'm 71 years old. I thank God to see it, and I'm just blessed to have a granddaughter and daughter and grandson that I have. He's a fine looking fella, and so is my daughter and my granddaughter.
Okay. So the first question is, when and where were you born?
Well, I was born in Blakely, Georgia. When I was born, my mother had a midwife. The house that I was born in is still standing right this day. I was born in 1951. So that's a long time ago.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen the home that I lived in a few times since I've been grown, and I hope to be able to see it once more before I clock out, which I don't think that's going to be no time soon. I just thank God for my life.
Do you remember what the house was like that you grew up in?
Well, it was a wooden house. It wasn't built on the ground, it was built on pedestals. It was a fairly small house, but it had a lot of love in it. And my father, he was a sharecropper. My uncles, they worked in the peanut field. My uncles worked in the peanut field. At that time, I was a little boy. I don't quite remember a whole lot that went on back then. As I grew older, my mother and I and my family, my brothers and sisters, we moved to Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. In 1963, I went to George Wolf School in a small place called Elmwood. A lot of people don't know about Elmwood. It wasn't far from the airport. And as time went on, I went to John Bartram High School on 66 and Elmwood Avenue. And from there,
And that's in Philadelphia.
from there, I went to Job Corps. I learned how to do carpentry, electrical work, and believe it or not, I ran a dredge. A dredge is a machine that they put in the water to deepen up the lake. And after that, I graduated from Job Corps. I came back home, and I got my first job. And I got my first job in a drugstore. And I worked a soda fountain. And as I grew older, I worked there for a while, and then I got a job across the street in a metal yard, cutting metal. From there, I worked for Strawbridge and Clothier in Ardmore, Pennsylvania. Some years passed by, and I had a son named Greg Mars. He passed away. Well, he didn't pass away. He was hit by a couple of cars. And at the time that he got hit by those couple of cars, I was living in Phoenix, Arizona. And
Okay, hold on, Grandad. I want to ask you some of the questions, and you kind of answered them.
okay.
So, I want to go back just a little bit. So, you said your first job was working at the drugstore?
Yes.
Okay. What is one of the earliest memories that you have? Like, what's something that you can remember from your childhood?
That's pretty much, that's pretty hard to remember. It's been so long. I do remember, actually, I gotta think back on that.
Okay.
I really need to think back on that. What I do know, I do remember we lived in a house in Elmwood, and we had a very happy childhood there. I remember days that we all would get together and we'd sit around the TV, and especially around the holidays. Like I remember we used to, as a family, we would all go trick or treat, you know, and things like that. And we really had a happy child life. I mean, my mother, very, very good woman, very Christian woman. Of course, she had us in church just about every day. And at the time, being young, I didn't actually want to go every day. We would have revival, which we would have that for a week. And every day we were in church. On Sundays, we would go to Sunday school early in the morning. She would get us all together, and we would catch the trolley car and go to church on Sunday morning. After Sunday school, then we had regular church, and after church, instead of us going home, we went upstairs and we ate dinner upstairs, and we fellowship upstairs and whatnot. And then after that, we were right back down in church. I remember it was a holy and sanctified church. And my mother used to shout a lot. And I do one funny thing. I do remember one funny thing about that. My mother was shouting, and I thought she was going to hurt herself, so I tried to get a hold to her arm, and she slapped me by
Oh
mistake.
my goodness.
Of course, I sat back down.
So that leads me to my next question. Did you ever get in a lot of trouble as a child or a teenager?
Well, when I used to work at the drugstore, I used to also, on the weekend, work in the shoe shine shop across the street called Lester's. I used to shine shoes there. Mr. Lester used to smoke cigars a lot. And I do remember one time that I used to do the inventory when the inventory would come in the basement of the pharmacy. And one day I stole a box of cigars from Mr. Lester. And Jules Savage, it was called Savage Drugstore, and he found out that I did that, And he didn't fire me. He called me in the back and he talked to me. And it kind of hurt me because he was so nice about it. Till at that time, it kind of stopped me from stealing from the store. I never really got in a lot of trouble. I wasn't the one in the family that got in trouble all the time. Very seldom I would get, do something that I wasn't supposed to do. But then, as a child, I didn't think that what I was doing was completely wrong.
Yes, sir.
Now I realize in my older age that stealing is not the thing to do at any age, and as I grew older and I realized that everything that I ever had or achieved, I achieved it through God. I didn't quite understand the logic as I should have, but today I do. And I can look back at my life today and see how much I accomplished over the years. I have my own place now. I have children. My finances are fairly well. I have a car now, which I've had several cars through those years. I lived in a senior citizen complex for about 2 years, and then I moved into a home, which I live in now, and I'm happy with where I'm at because at the senior citizen place, there was very little that you could do. But now I have the freedom that I need. I couldn't have a lot of company, and sometimes when I had company, if they spent the night, I would have to get permission from the office. And I didn't feel too comfortable with that. Being that I was paying my rent, I felt as though if I wanted someone to come by and spend the night, that it should have been okay, but it wasn't okay with them. So with that made me move.
Yes, sir. What, when you were younger, did you have a best friend, and what type of things did you all do, like, for fun as kids?
Well, when I was young, I used to sing a lot. And,
Okay, we left off with you telling us, what did you do for fun when you were young, and did you have a best friend?
well, a best friend?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I lived back to Elmwood. I had a best friend named Victor Myers. We were, I guess, 11, 12, somewhere around in there. And there was a shack down the street from us. Nobody lived in it. It was pretty much like a two-room, and we used it as a clubhouse. And we would go there just about every day and sit in there and talk and just have a lot of fun in there. We didn't get into a lot of trouble in there. And the people that lived next to it, they didn't have a problem with us being there because we weren't what you call bad kids. And Victor Myers, as he got older, he started working for the post office. And as I got older, I worked for Amtrak. I got a job with Amtrak. I worked for Amtrak for 28 years. And I loved it because it was outside. And what I really liked about it, I didn't have to do any work. I just sat in a machine. And when they would put the railroad tracks down, I ran what they call the stress machine. What that does is when they lay the track doesn't exactly match up together. And what this machine did that I ran was heat up the track till it gets pretty much like rubber and pull it together. And my machine would drop a mold down over the seam and weld it together.
Okay.
If people my age remember, when the train would go by, you would hear the click, clack, clack, click, 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 click. You don't hear that anymore because the tracks are welded together and then they're grinded down smooth so you don't hear the train when it comes.
Wow.
Yeah, so, and I retired from there. I retired from Amtrak. During the time working for Amtrak, I had 5 guys working for me. I did a lot of home remodeling, which sometimes I do now. I don't do a high volume of that work anymore because of my age, and I had heart surgery, and I wear a pacemaker now. So that limits my ability to do what I really like doing. I love to do fixing houses because I could look back and be proud of what I've done. But I thank God that I had these experiences. A lot of times I get somebody and I teach them how to do different jobs, you know, and they respect me and they love me for that. And I just get enjoyment out of it. I get a lot of enjoyment out of it.
When you were a kid, what did you think you were gonna do, like, for your career or as a job? I know probably back then it was a lot different. So, like, today, a lot of people want to be like an influencer, or, you know, you still have your few people that want to grow up and be doctors, lawyers, or, you know, a state representative or something like that. What was something that you wanted to grow up and do?
Well, myself, I love to sing. And I wanted to be like the Temptations, the Four Tops, Smokey Robinson and the Miracles. And I did at one time, I went up on Woodland Avenue in Philadelphia. And this guy had a guitar and microphone store there. And he was waiting on a customer, and I was in there singing. And he stopped talking to the lady and he came over to me. And he said, "You have a beautiful voice." And he gave me a business card. And he told me whenever I wanted to sing professionally, to give him a call. And later I found out that he was the manager of Honey and the Bees, which was a popular female group at the time. My intentions was to give him a call, but I was so busy chasing girls. I was chasing girls. And I felt at that particular time that I was having all the fame I wanted. Because all the girls liked me because I could sing. So that went down the drain. You know, I still do a little singing right today. I don't sing quite as good as I used to, but I can still hold a note. So, and I'm thankful for that.
So, going back when you were talking about your son, Greg, you started talking about you ended up in Phoenix. So I want to kind of ask, like, how did you meet my grandma Ella? Did you meet her by being in Phoenix at that time, or how did that go?
Well, in Phoenix, my family ran an ice cream business.
Mhm.
And at that time, I believe we had like 20 ice cream trucks. And I drove one, and my family, we all drove ice cream trucks.
Mhm.
And we used to go to the park called Esteban Park. They used to have a lot of baseball games there.
Mhm.
And we would drive our trucks out there and form a circle. And then we purchased disco equipment, and we would set up there. And just about everybody in Phoenix, Arizona came to Esteban Park on Sunday.
Mhm.
And we used to have a big shebang out there. And it was really, really exciting. And then I met my daughter's mother, and we talked and got to know each other for a while. And then we got married. And I had my daughter. Afterwards, we moved to Philadelphia, and I worked for a place called the Food Center.
Mhm.
We delivered groceries and all types of items for the supermarket. And I worked there for some years. I enjoyed it. And unfortunately, me and my daughter's mother, we separated. We went our different ways. But today we talk periodically,
Mhm.
simply as friends.
Mhm.
But the most blessing that I feel I got was my daughter.
How did you feel? Well, one, how did you find out that grandma was pregnant with my mom? Like, did she just tell you, or was she eating something weird? And
No, she just came right out and told me. And I didn't know what to think right then at that particular time.
Mhm.
But then after a couple of weeks, I kind of felt good about it.
Mhm.
I said, now I'm gonna have me a daughter.
And so when my mom actually got here today in the hospital when grandma was giving birth, what was going through your head?
Well, I gotta tell you, when my daughter's mother had my daughter, I was in the delivery room at the time.
Mhm.
And actually, the doctor, she was about to give birth pretty fast. And at that time, the doctor walked out of the room for a minute, and she started to scream. And I looked, and I saw my daughter's head coming out.
Mhm.
And it scared me. So I ran in the hallway, and I said, no, doctor. I said, you got to come back now, right now. So he ran back in. He told the nurse to bring him a delivery kit.
Mhm.
And he told Doc he said, push, push, push. And she was pushing. And finally, my daughter came out with a head full of hair. And when the umbilical cord, when the doctor got his hands on the umbilical cord,
Mhm.
he handed me some scissors after he clamped the umbilical cord, and he had me to separate my daughter from her mom.
Mhm.
And that was the most exciting thing that I have ever seen in my entire life.
So you had never seen it before with your previous kids?
I have never seen nothing like that in my life.
Wow.
And it was an experience,
Mhm.
but you know the end results. I got a beautiful daughter, granddaughter, and a grandson, and that's a blessing right there. That's the best thing that ever happened in my life, and I love them to death.
So how many children do you have in total, including your son Greg, and how many grandchildren do you have?
Well, I had two sons.
Mhm.
My firstborn son, his name was Greg, and after Greg was born, at the age of 15, he got hit by a couple of cars on Lindbergh Boulevard where we used to live,
Mhm.
and he passed away as a result from that. And at that time, I stayed in Philadelphia for a while, and I did finally end up going back to Phoenix, Arizona, where I worked at a slaughterhouse
Mhm.
called Cudahy Bar S Meats.
Mhm.
And I worked I was an expeller operator. What that is all the blood that came from the animals. It went into this tank and it was cooked. And when it dried out, it came out as a fine powder, and they used that for fertilizer.
Wow.
And I used to, after I expel all everything and crush it up, grind it up, then I used to have to bag it up.
Mhm.
And I worked a 2 to 10 shift, which I loved it because I could go to work at 2 o'clock. And at my age that time, I could go to work at 2 and get off at 10, and I could go party after I got off work because nothing really happened until after 10 o'clock. So that was perfect for me.
Yes, sir.
Mhm.
So we know that you wanted to grow up and be a singer. What dream did you have for your kids, or even now today for your grandchildren? Like, what's something that you want them to be, see, or experience?
Well, honestly, I wanted my daughter to grow up and pursue whatever was fitting for her. Pretty much, my daughter did great, and she's doing great now. Remember, there's always a struggle in life.
Mhm.
Life is an experience. Life is a very good teacher.
Mhm.
And my daughter, she she pretty much accepted life for what it was, and she used what she was taught as an experience, and she used it and utilized it to the best of her ability. Then my daughter gave birth to my granddaughter, and that was a blessing in disguise. Then she gave birth to my grandson. Fine looking young fellow. I have a son today that lives in New Jersey. His name is Melvin. He's 50 now. He's 50 years old now. And his wife and their family, they run 8 different farms.
Wow.
They have 8 farms which they plant twice a year. And my son is doing fine. They built their home from the ground up. And I have 3 grandsons through that. And I have a great granddaughter, which I haven't seen yet. I went over to New Jersey several times to see my great granddaughter. Every time I would go, she wouldn't be there. So I'm praying today, which I do all the time, that I get a chance to lay my eyes on my great granddaughter. You know, and that's like a space missing out of my heart, because I yearn to see her. And I ask God to bless me to be able to lay eyes on my great granddaughter. And with that, I think my life will be complete. In 2009, I lost my mother, beautiful one. I don't think nobody on the face of this earth had a mother as beautiful as mine, because she taught us to love and respect everybody. She taught us to love and respect even our enemies. She said, if you got an enemy and they need help, help them anyway. And I didn't quite understand that concept until one day my mother had an enemy a couple of doors from us, and this woman was a really, really, really disrespectful, bad woman. One day this woman got real sick, and she sent her daughter to my mother and asked my mom, could she come and help her? My mom got up immediately and went over to help her, and she prayed for her. And that very next day, that woman was feeling 100% back to normal. And from that day, they became the best of friends. So, you know, you never give up on life. Life is going to always have its ups and downs, but at the end of the day, God always got your back. And always remember that as long as you live. And I, you know, to my grandchildren, I ask them and I try to, you know, tell them to never give up on life. Whatever you try to do, there's going to be ins and outs all the time. But then sometimes in life, things happen for a reason. Sometimes God will test you and test your faith. And through testing your faith, it strengthens you. You know, it strengthens you because God wants us to have a wonderful life. And it's just amazing what God can do. And I say to my grandkids, don't ever give up. Always trust in God. Whatever you do in your life, put God first. If you don't put God first, eventually you're going to fail. So, you know, always remember, put God first in your life, and you'll be much happier in life. That's what I think. Okay?
What's something that you see is different about the way children grow up today that wasn't around or was but now isn't around when you were growing up? Like, what's different?
Well, I look at life today. I want to say this first. If I had been told in my younger years that life would be like it is today, I would not have believed it.
Mm-hmm.
I look around, nothing's the same anymore. It seems to me that the kids today, as far as I'm concerned, most of the children today are left to raise themselves.
Mm-hmm.
The parents, a lot of these kids today don't have no home training. They're not taught to respect their elders, and they say and do anything and don't feel as though what they say in front of grown folks is disrespectful.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I look around, they're shooting, they're killing, they're drugging, they're robbing, they're raping, they're home invading, stealing cars, and it's just ridiculous today. And as I said, if I had been told it would be like this today, I would not have believed it. But you know, there is a God.
Mm-hmm.
And sooner or later, you're going to pay for all these things that these kids today, they're going to pay for what they're doing. And the parents are going to pay too, because they weren't there to teach their children the value of life and how to love and respect people. They don't want to work, you know, and that doesn't go for all of them.
Mm-hmm.
Because I love to see young men and women going at and pursuing their dream. That's very important today, especially in this time and age. You know, and I say to them, there's nothing that you can't do if you put your mind to it.